Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to dive deep into something I think a lot of us feel, this kind of paradox, right? This stealthy exhaustion. It's not just about having too much on your plate, too many tasks. It's something deeper, about how we're focusing, or maybe how we're organizing our attention. It feels like, well, it feels urgent. Like we need to really question the architecture of our attention itself.
It really is. And this deep dive, it's about exploring this quiet, almost tectonic power. It's not found in just doing more, but in presence, in just being.
Yeah.
We're looking at how it's possible to be, super productive, getting all the praise, but still feel fundamentally, I don't know, hollow, empty.
Oh, I know that feeling. I feel like I've definitely been there. I remember this one time specifically catching myself answering some non-urgent work email while my kid was right there, telling him this really involved story about like a Lego spaceship. And I was technically doing both things, emailing, nodding, but I wasn't truly present for either one. It's like that Running Man idea. He keeps running because if he stops, it feels like falling.
That's it, exactly. That's the core rupture we're talking about. That man, he's driven by the calendar, by the next thing, not by his actual, physical experience. And the silence, the space between the actions, that stirs up something he's maybe spent years trying to outrun. And this isn't just some abstract philosophical point about, like, work-life balance. It's a structural psychological issue. And Gestalt psychology gives us a really useful lens here.
Okay, Gestalt. So, starting with the basics, figure and ground.
Exactly. Gestalt theory tells us we don't just passively absorb reality. We're constantly, actively organizing it. So in any moment, something pops out as the figure, the main focus, the bright, clear shape. Everything else just fades into the background. The problem, the collapse, happens when we make action doing, the perpetual figure.
So the figure is the loud stuff, the urgent email alert, the goal we have to hit this quarter, the problem screaming to be solved now.
Precisely. And when action is always the figure, they're the ground, everything else that gets ignored. It's relegated to this unnoticed space, that subtle tension in your shoulders you don't feel, the breath you haven't noticed all day, the quiet between thoughts, or that sort of unspoken longing underneath a massive to-do list. We treat all that background as if it's just empty, passive, nothing.
Okay, and if I'm getting this right, if I only ever focus on the figure, the doing, I start mistaking sheer busyness for actual purpose. Is that the key distinction here?
Yeah, it's absolutely the critical distinction.
Yeah.
Because here's the twist. The background isn't empty. It's not passive at all. Think about like words on a page. The black ink, the letters, that's the figure. But it only has meaning because of the white paper behind it, the ground. That ground, the stillness, the being, that's the fertile field for which the figure, the action, actually emerges. Without that receptive ground, action is just, well, it's just noise. It lacks context.
Wow. That really challenges our whole cultural script, doesn't it? We're taught, maybe not explicitly, but relentlessly, that our value comes from visible output. What we do, we praise a kid for the drawing they made, the accomplishment, but how often do we explicitly tell them they're valued just for their presence, just for being in the room?
We've kind of turned being into this awkward waiting room between tasks, something to get through quickly. But neurologically, that waiting room is where the really important stuff happens. And we've actually found a pretty powerful scientific correlate for this ground in the brain. It's called the default mode network, the DMN.
Ah, the DMN, right, the brain's sort of idling state.
Yeah, exactly. That network of brain regions that lights up when you stop focusing intensely on the outside world. When you're, daydreaming, maybe in the shower or driving a route you know really well. For years, scientists kind of dismissed this DMN activity. They thought it was just background noise. But now we know the DMN is absolutely critical. It's where we mentally simulate future possibilities, where we reflect on ourselves to build our sense of identity, and crucially, it's where we process complex social and ethical information, making sense of things.
So the ground, this state of being, it's literally where we make meaning, where we figure out who we are, what matters, maybe what we should do next. And yet, our modern lives seem designed to systematically suppress it. Constant input, notifications, the schedule, even just the guilt of not doing something productive every second.
Which leads directly to the cost of this chronic imbalance. If the DMN is starved, if the ground is consistently ignored, then action itself starts to change. It becomes compulsive. It stops being this intentional, responsive expression and turns into, well, just desperate motion.
Activity for activity's sake. So this is where the obsession with doing, with productivity at all costs, it stops looking like ambition and starts looking more like a symptom of a deeper fracture.
Precisely. When the background, the ground, effectively disappears from our awareness, the figure, the action, it becomes brittle. It feels desperate. It clings to motion. We start mistaking turbulence, constantly checking email, endlessly scrolling social media, obsessively tracking metrics that don't really matter. We mistake that frantic energy for something meaningful, for salvation even. And that's why you could have a super productive day, check off everything on the list, and still feel completely empty. Because you acted, but you didn't fully inhabit the action. You weren't grounded.
And this connects to that Gestalt concept you mentioned, loss of contact.
Yes, exactly. Loss of contact is essentially a rupture with the fullness of your own perceptual field. What it means functionally is you lose that clear boundary between yourself and your environment. You might start feeling responsible for everyone else's emotions, or you speak, but your words feel flat, lacking resonance. There's often this feeling of disconnection, like you're just watching your life happen on a screen instead of living it.
And that sounds like it feeds into this really vicious cycle, a downward spiral that's incredibly hard to break out of.
It really does. Think about the chain. Our culture glorifies doing. So action becomes the permanent fixed figure. Being, the ground, gets demoted, ignored, it basically atrophies. Then, because the ground is weak, the action becomes compulsive. You feel hollow or anxious, so you do more hoping to fill that void or escape the feeling. But doing more just pushes the ground further away. The compulsion tightens its grip, and true insight, genuine creativity, it becomes impossible because the figure, the action, has nowhere to rest, no background to emerge from meaningfully.
Okay, so if we accept this model, if this resonates, how do we actually break that cycle? Especially when, let's be honest, modern life, careers, they often demand high output. How do we integrate this without just, dropping out or sacrificing necessary progress?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it starts, I think, with redefining what we mean by closure. Our productivity culture tells us closure is external. Check the box, finish the task, done, move on. But true Gestalt closure, the kind that actually nourishes us, it's internal integration. It's about resolving the tension within the whole perceptual field, not just completing an external activity.
Wait, so you're saying I could finish some huge complex project, hit all the targets, but still feel fragmented, still feel incomplete? Because all the unspoken stuff, the tension, the doubts, the ignored feelings during the project, the ground that's all still unresolved inside me.
Absolutely. That unresolved tension in the ground is often why we immediately jump to the next task. It's not always because we're super efficient. Sometimes we're jumping to avoid feeling that unresolved background noise, that incompleteness. The field itself feels unsettled, so the compulsion for more doing, more figure, continues. It masks the underlying lack of integration.
That really speaks to another concept, isomorphism, right? The idea that you can't really fake this internal state.
That's exactly right. Isomorphism is a core Gestalt principle. It basically states that the structure of your inner experience mirrors the structure of your outer expression. Your internal world shapes your external actions. So if your inner field, that relationship between figure and ground, is fragmented, out of balance, then your actions, no matter how efficient they look on the surface, will also be fragmented. They'll lack depth, resonance. You simply cannot optimize your way into genuine connection or wholeness. The quality of your doing will always reflect the state of your being.
So, attention isn't supposed to be this relentless, fixed spotlight we just force onto output constantly. It should be more like a rhythm.
An oscillation.
It absolutely must be. Healthy attention is naturally advanced. It moves, you focus intently, that's the figure. Then you need to soften, broaden your awareness, receive, listen, that's the ground. You act, then you pause to feel the effect, listen to the silence that follows. Modern life, with its demand for constant focus, constant output, it breaks this natural, vital rhythm. The solution isn't to stop doing, but to consciously reclaim that rhythm.
Okay, so the really radical reframe here is that being isn't the opposite of doing. It's not about choosing one or the other.
Exactly. Being is the foundation. It's the necessary condition that makes authentic, meaningful doing possible in the first place. Without that grounding in being, action tends to be reactive, compensatory, maybe even compulsive. But with being, when action emerges from that state of wholeness and presence, it becomes responsive expression. It flows naturally. This is incredibly powerful, actually. It suggests that maybe the most radical, even subversive act we can commit in this hyperactive world addicted to constant motion is simply to be. To allow ourselves presence, because that presence itself starts to change the field, starts to restore balance.
And the beautiful thing is you can start cultivating this right now. You don't need an hour-long meditation cushion session, although that can help too.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful, simplest interventions is just reclaiming the rhythm in tiny increments, like
Yeah.
3 seconds. The next time you're about to act, just before you click send on that email, or before you start speaking in a meeting, or even just before you stand up to go do the next thing on your list, just pause. Pause for 3 seconds before the action begins.
And the key is not using those 3 seconds to quickly plan or optimize the action,
Right.
but just to feel the ground.
Precisely. Just for those 3 seconds, feel the actual physical sensations, the weight of your body, the feeling of the air on your skin, the space around you. Maybe notice the simple intention underneath the urge to act. That tiny pause works because it honors the ground. It acknowledges the background, allows the whole perceptual field to just breathe for a moment, to reorganize itself slightly before the figure, the action, is allowed to emerge. It starts transforming that compulsive movement into more responsive, intentional action.
What really stands out to me in all this is that it's not about forcing some perfect state of Zen or fixing everything immediately. It sounds much more gentle. It sounds like it's fundamentally about permission.
It really is about allowing. What if, just what if, the most powerful thing you can actually do isn't striving harder to be enough, not chasing more output to somehow justify your existence? What if it's simply about allowing yourself to be fully present, right here, right now? That quiet act of allowing your own presence. That's the deep power we've maybe been overlooking. And perhaps that's the beginning of everything else.